We were one of the few companies with a large Nutcracker that didn't have to cancel a single show.
COVID crushed all the plans that I had for the season. As we all know, we could not partner, we cannot be next to each other, and that is completely impossible in dance unless it's a solo. So all the works that were created previously were not fitting in those parameters of COVID performances. So I had to start over and come up with some new repertoire or new creations that would allow us to dance sort of together, maybe in smaller groups, but still together in the same space without partnering each other, without touching. And that created a new need for new choreographers, obviously, new works. And I asked our own dancers who wanted to participate and create new works with those rules. And we had great response from our dancers. I talked to our choreographer in residence, Claudia Schreier, and asked her to create a new work for dancers in a larger group so that we can comply with the COVID restrictions without touching each other, but be in a somewhat closer proximity. And that's how Pleiades dances started.
There was the kind of collective trauma that everyone had been experiencing coming through COVID. That folks had been through so many experiences in an art form that is generally in person to try and find ways to continue to operate and the uncertainty of when we would be coming back out. So I showed up with a kind of energy and some fresh ideas, but realizing that I really had to pause and understand what was really needed in the moment for the organization, and then how best to start working with a new team to accomplish it.
It was quite difficult, taking class and trying to get back into shape and doing things in our living room, not quite having the motivation of having a big, huge studio like we have here to kind of rehearse in. A lot of my worry kind of went into when we get back into the studio, whenever that may be, what is my stamina going to be like? What is my physical physique going to be looking like?
For me, what's the most challenging is not having the accountability of, okay, class is at 9:30, I'm gonna show up at 9 to warm up, and I'm gonna take class with all of my coworkers, and I like the sense of community, it keeps me going.
During COVID, it was really important for them to continue working even at home, even a little bit, do some classes. So we, of course, used the Zoom. We had some pre-recorded classes, live classes, offering to them so that they can access it safely from their houses, from their homes. At the same time, during COVID, we made everything possible so that dancers had access to studios. It was separated into different time periods so that they can safely come and take classes, work on their own or with the artistic staff.
What we did was we had a very small summer program. We had the students in pods where they weren't crossing with each other. And we had pathway down one hallway and out the other hallway.
And we had to do breaks in between so that the air changes. We had to do extra mopping and cleaning after every session.
Everybody had to have their temperature checked before they entered the building, and we went through all the health checks. Everyone was masked the entire time, and we had a pretty small summer program, but it was successful.
I did arrive with a level of optimism and ambition that didn't quite match what the underlying economics of the organization were. And that government funding that came through the CARES Act and all of those programs in part masked what the real situation was economically. We had planned an event for the fall of 2021, decided to cancel it in part because we could not figure out how to attract people back, and focused our attention on the Nutcracker and returning back to stage. Now at that time, the staff, they had gotten out of the patterns that had really driven how they collaborated over time, how they ramped up for a show. How do you create a safe environment backstage? At the same time, while production and the artistic team are trying to figure this out, our marketing team, our development team are all looking forward to the front of the house to say, what do we need to do in terms of testing protocols? Do we require vaccinations? Do we require audiences to be masked?
COVID testing and separation and rules in the dressing room, costumes, as well as all of the other things that go with a performance, you know, and your artistry and your technique and bringing your A game every day. It was a challenge inside and outside of the show.
It was really hard. I think at that point, being back in the theater, a lot of people was still getting used to the COVID protocols, wearing masks, talking with masks, working with masks on. So it was really challenging having to remind people to keep their mask on, and for us to follow protocol with testing and just making sure that everyone was transparent with their health and making sure that if they weren't feeling 100%, they stayed home.
And we had a fairly elaborate strategy for testing before the show, isolating anyone who was tested positive, sending them for a second test, some off-site, and setting up hotels to quarantine them nearby, because many of our dancers live in the same houses, so they couldn't go home, or they would run the risk of infecting more members of the cast. So we worked through that, and through a little bit of luck, a lot of great planning, and a lot of creativity on the part of our artistic leadership, each day they were rejuggling the casts that have hundreds of roles in this really massive production of the Nutcracker, realigning, and the dancers who were healthy really picked up slack and did additional roles or did back-to-back shows in a way that they wouldn't traditionally do.
Well, when they came back in the fall of 2022, masks were optional. So a lot of the students still had masks on. Most of the teachers, here, all the teachers had to be vaccinated, all the entire staff. So they were very comfortable. But a lot of the students were definitely still masked. The classes were not full by any means. The hardest thing is getting them used to moving, because they had been dancing in their living rooms. And we lost, it's like the students in the academic school lost a year and a half. It's the same with the physical technique. We lost a year and a half in that. So that was very noticeable. And especially when we started auditioning for Nutcracker and trying to get the kids into spring concerts. So their spatial awareness was gone.
For the first time, we saw people dancing together and touching. It was unreal. After 2 years break, pretty much, it was really unreal to see how dancers could actually touch their hands, partner, and when we removed the masks, even breathe into each other or even giving kisses. And
doing Nutcracker right after COVID was very special because, it brought us all together again, and it was nice to be able to share, the space with the same people we've been working with.
That just makes us treasure it more. And of course, I always wanted to bring larger works, full lengths. Those are very exciting works. They always bring some narrative to it. There's deep meanings in those bigger works, and our company grew, so I wanted to keep everybody busy and be on stage.
So it was a pretty touch and go period for us. At the end, we really celebrated because we pulled it off. We performed all the shows. Our audiences, for the most part, were very happy. Our financial performance was close to $1 million below what we had planned and what we could typically expect for a Nutcracker production. And that set the stage for what would come next.
made in Georgia.